We live in an era that I think can best be described as the content mill.
Oh, absolutely. That's the perfect term for it.
If you're an artist, a creator, or, I mean, even just a person with a brand today, the rule is so simple. You have to feed the beast.
Constant.
Post every day, story every hour. If you disappear for a month, the algorithm, it just punishes you. If you disappear for a year, you are forgotten.
You're irrelevant. The game moves on without you.
But today, we are diving into the anomaly, the glitch in that matrix. We're looking at an artist who has built a 40-year career, sold nearly 75 million records, and achieved icon status by doing the exact opposite of all that.
She doesn't feed the beast. She starves it.
She starves it, and it just keeps coming back for more.
It's the ultimate paradox of the modern music industry, isn't it? We're talking about someone who is, arguably one of the most successful British female artists in history.
One of the most successful, period.
Right. Yet her fame is almost defined by her absence. In a world that is just so noisy, she has somehow managed to weaponize silence.
We are talking, of course, about Sade. And I'm really excited about this one because I think people have this very specific, almost surface-level image of her.
I know exactly what you mean.
The ponytail, the hoop earrings.
The smooth jazz playlist at a dinner party.
Yes, that's it. But when you actually dig into the source material, the biography, the discography, all the industry analysis, it's so much stranger and, frankly, more calculated than that.
Calculated is the right word, but not in a cynical way. It feels more calculated in terms of preservation.
Preservation of self or of the art.
Both, I think. And look, before we even get into biography, we have to dismantle the first and biggest misconception. When most people say Sade, they're picturing the woman, Helen Folasade Adu. But Sade is not a solo act.
Right. And this is something I think even casual fans forget all the time. Sade is a band.
It is a band, exactly. It's a collective. It's not just a singer with a revolving door of session musicians she hires for a tour. You have Stuart Matthew Mano on guitar and saxophone, Andrew Hale on keyboards, and Paul Denman on bass. And here is the real kicker. They have been together since 1983.
Think about that. I mean, just try to name another band with that kind of stability.
It's virtually non-existent in pop music. You have, the Rolling Stones, U2, maybe? Yeah. The list of bands that keep their core lineup for 4 decades is incredibly short.
And that continuity, it has to be the secret sauce for the sound, right? You just can't replicate that kind of musical telepathy if you're hiring new guys for every album.
You absolutely cannot. That specific Sade sound, which we will absolutely break down later because it's so much more complex than just smooth jazz, is a direct result of 4 people growing up together musically.
They lock in.
They lock in. It's a hive mind. So our mission for this deep dive is to really look at how a fashion student from Essex and her bandmates created this sound that just conquered the world.
And also why the hardest rappers in the game, obsess over them.
Which is such a fascinating part of the story. And ultimately what this career teaches us about the economic value of scarcity.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the origin story. Because it's surprisingly geographic, you can't really understand the aesthetic of the band without understanding where the lead singer came from. And it really is a tale of 2 very, very different worlds.
It's a massive collision of cultures. Helen Folasade Adu was born on January 16, 1959 in Ibadan, Nigeria.
And Ibadan, we should say, it isn't some small village. It's a major city, a huge cultural and economic hub.
A huge city. Her father, Adebisi Adu, was a Nigerian lecturer in economics, so very academic, very driven. Her mother, Anne Hayes, was an English district nurse. They had met in London, married in 1955, and then moved to Nigeria.
So right from birth, you have this mix of the African academic elite and the pragmatic English working class.
Precisely. And her name, Folasade, is Yoruba. It translates to crowned with wealth.
Which, I mean, looking at her net worth and her legacy now, that feels a bit like destiny, doesn't it?
A little on the nose, maybe. But she didn't spend her whole childhood in Nigeria, did she?
No, and this is the traumatic pivot point in her early life. When she was just 4 years old, her parents separated.
And her mother, Anne, took Sade and her older brother, Banji, and moved back to England.
Back to England. They moved in with the grandparents at first near Colchester in Essex, and eventually they settled in a place called Holland-on-Sea.
I want to pause on that for a second because that contrast is just, it's jarring.
Yeah.
You go from the vibrant, rhythmic, heat-soaked environment of Ibadan
to Holland-on-Sea, yeah.
For listeners who don't know Essex, especially that coastal part,
yeah.
It's gray, it's quiet, it's very traditional working-class England. the seaside in winter.
It's a massive shock to the system for a 4-year-old, and I think you can almost hear that tension in her music later on.
How so?
Well, there's a warmth to her sound, a rhythmic complexity that feels distinctly African, but it's overlaid with this very cool, very detached, slightly melancholic English delivery.
That's a great way to put it. It's the sound of Ibadan, filtering through the gray skies of Essex.
Exactly. And another thing that sets her apart, unlike a lot of pop stars who were kind of groomed from age 5 to be on stage, you know, the whole Disney kid pipeline.
Right, the stage school kids.
She wasn't chasing fame at all. She was chasing art. The sources highlight her time at St. Martin's School of Art in London extensively.
And this is arguably the most important non-musical fact about her. She went to St. Martin's to study fashion design. Now, St. Martin's is, it's hallowed ground.
It's the Ivy League of art schools.
It is. This is where Alexander McQueen, Stella McCartney, John Galliano went. It's not just a school. It's an incubator for the avant-garde. It teaches you a specific way of seeing the world.
So she's being trained from the jump to think visually, to think about silhouette, texture, presentation.
Exactly. She wasn't just a singer waiting for a microphone to be handed to her. She was a designer, actively constructing an image. The sources say she worked as a fashion designer and even as a model after graduating.
And you see that so clearly. When you look at the album covers, the stage setups, the way she dresses, it's never cluttered.
Never.
It's minimalist, it's powerful, it's curated. That is the designer's eye at work. She understands that what you don't show is just as important as what you do show.
Which connects perfectly to the music later, that idea of negative space, of silence.
Totally. But how does she make the jump? How do we get from sketching designs in a London flat to fronting a world-famous band?
It was almost by accident. It started with a band called Pride. This was an 8-piece Latin funk band in the early 80s, a big, sprawling group.
And she was just a backup singer in it.
Just a backup singer.
Yeah.
But while in Pride, she struck up a friendship, a creative partnership, really, with the guitarist and saxophonist Stuart Matthewman.
There he is, the nucleus of the future band.
Right. They started writing together on the side, away from the rest of Pride. And they came up with this track called Smooth Operator.
Which, ironically, is now one of the most famous songs in history.
It is. And the problem for Pride was that when Sade and Stuart would get their little spotlight moment to perform Smooth Operator during the set, the audience went crazy for it.
Oh, wow. So it was overshadowing the main act.
Completely. It was sucking all the oxygen out of the rest of the show. It just became undeniable that this was the special thing. So in 1983, the split happened.
Amicably.
From what the sources say, it seems like it was just a natural evolution, no huge drama. Sade and Stuart grabbed the keyboardist, Andrew Hale, and the bassist, Paul Denman, and they broke away to form Sade.
And the buzz was immediate, wasn't it? This wasn't a slow burn playing to empty pubs for years.
It was an explosion. The source mentions their debut gig at a nightclub called Heaven in London, a legendary venue.
And they hadn't even signed a record deal yet.
Not yet. And 1,000 people were turned away at the door.
1,000 people turned away for an unsigned band. That's almost impossible to conceive of today without some massive viral TikTok hit.
It really speaks to the power of the London club scene at that time. Word of mouth was physical. It was people in clubs, in pubs, on the street, just talking about this woman with the incredible voice and this unbelievably striking look.
But, and I love this detail, despite all the glamour that was starting to form around her on stage, the reality of her life was very, very different.
Oh, completely different. During this period of intense hype, she was squatting in a derelict fire station in Tottenham with her boyfriend at the time, the writer Robert Elms.
I love that juxtaposition. On stage, she's the absolute epitome of elegance and sophistication. Off stage, she's living the gritty, cold, squatting life of 80s London.
It adds this layer of authenticity to the cool, doesn't it? It wasn't bought. It was built from the ground up.
It grounds the music. That sophistication wasn't elitist. It was aspirational. It was something beautiful being created from a very real, very unglamorous place.
Exactly.
So they get signed to Epic Records. They go into the studio, the power plant in London, to record the debut, Diamond Life.
Right.
And this leads us into what we're calling the golden era, roughly 1984 to 1992. 4 albums, world domination.
It's an incredible run. But let's talk about the production of Diamond Life first. They did it in 6 weeks.
6 weeks, from start to finish, which, for a debut album that sounds that polished, that confident, is remarkably fast.
They worked with a producer named Robin Millar. And this is where the Sade sound was truly codified. If you listen to Diamond Life, it just doesn't sound like other records from 1984.
Not at all. Let's set the scene. 1984 was the year of loud, synthesized pop. You had Van Halen's Jump,
Prince's Purple Rain.
Cyndi Lauper's Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Everything was neon. Big hair, big shoulder pads, and big gated reverb on the drums. High energy.
Exactly. And then Sade comes in with Diamond Life, and
Yeah.
it's quiet.
It's warm, it's dry, it has room tone, it breathes, it draws from jazz and soul, but it strips away all the indulgent noodling. It's incredibly disciplined.
I want to dig into that word discipline, especially with the band. You mentioned the bassist, Paul Denman. His playing is fascinating to me because he plays heavy.
He does. He's a huge reggae fan, and you can hear it. If you isolate the bass lines on tracks like Smooth Operator or Your Love is King, they're very prominent, very melodic, and they sit just slightly behind the beat.
It gives the music this heavy, almost dub-influenced anchor. It's what makes you nod your head.
It's the foundation.
Yeah.
Then you have Stewart saxophone, which is so soulful, but it's never screechy or over the top. It's restrained. And then, floating on top of all of that, you have Sade's voice.
The New Yorker had a brilliant quote about her voice, describing it as a grainy contralto full of air, and they said she values imperfect dignity over a show of pain.
That is the crucial distinction. That phrase is perfect. Think about the other great female vocalists of that era. Whitney Houston, later on Mariah Carey.
Powerhouses.
Absolute powerhouses. The style was melisma, it was vocal gymnastics, it was about showing you how high you can go and how loud you can belt.
It's a look what I can do style of singing.
Exactly. And Sade does the absolute opposite. She whispers, she holds back, she implies emotion rather than screaming it at you. It's cool in the truest original sense of the word. It's lowered temperature. It draws you in instead of pushing you back.
And the world was clearly ready to cool down because Diamond Life sold over 6 million copies.
Yeah, went on to become the best-selling debut album ever by a British female vocalist. A record that stood for a long time.
And it just set them up perfectly for the follow-up, Promise, in 1985, which was somehow even bigger.
Promise hit #1 in both the UK and the US. It gave us the sweetest Taboo.
A song which stayed on the Billboard Hot 100 for 6 months.
6 months is an eternity in chart years. It's just unheard of. And it wasn't just commercial success, it was critical acclaim. She won the Grammy for Best New Artist in 1986.
Which was a watershed moment, the first Nigerian-born artist to win that specific award.
A huge moment. And you can see her influence spreading. She dabbled in acting right around this time in the 1986 film Absolute Beginners.
But she didn't stick with it, did she?
No, not at all. She played a jazz singer, a character named Athene Duncannon. So it was a role very, very close to her stage persona.
Typecasting, basically.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
But by all accounts, she hated the experience of filmmaking. She didn't like the lack of control, the endless waiting around, the fakeness of it all. She realized her medium was music, where she and the band could control every single variable.
That control freak tendency, and I mean that in the best possible way, seems to be a running theme throughout her whole career.
It is. So they released Stronger Than Pride in '88, which is another huge success. Paradise becomes a #1 R&B hit.
Yeah.
Then comes Love Deluxe in '92. And Love Deluxe is where I feel the sound shifted a bit. It got darker, more melancholic.
It got more atmospheric, I think. Love Deluxe is just a masterpiece of mood. This is the album with no ordinary love.
Of course.
The production becomes more spacious. You can really hear the influence of the emerging trip-hop scene coming out of Bristol at that time, that slow, down-tempo, moody vibe.
That's a great point. It feels like a late-night album. And visually, this is her absolute peak. The album cover Sade topless, covered her chest, with that sleek ponytail and the red lipstick, is iconic.
It's so vulnerable and yet so armored at the same time.
Perfectly put. So by 1992, they are untouchable. They've had a decade of nonstop hits. They're rich, they're respected, and then the pattern changes.
This brings us to what I think is the most fascinating part of her entire career strategy, the hiatus.
The strategy is scarcity.
But was it really a strategy, do you think? Or was she just tired of it all?
I think it started as life. After the massive world tour for Love Deluxe, the band was just exhausted. And Sade Adu's personal life was in flux. She'd had a brief marriage to the Spanish film director Carlos Pliego that ended.
And then she gave birth to her first child in 1996.
Right. And she moved to the Caribbean for a while. She basically just stepped off the carousel. She wanted a real life away from the spotlight.
But stepping off for 8 years. In the 90s, the decade of Britpop and grunge and gangster rap, I mean, that was considered career suicide.
Conventional wisdom says yes, absolutely.
Ugh.
The industry model is built entirely on momentum. You tour, you do press, you release an album, you repeat. If you stop, you lose your spot.
But Sade proved that if the product is premium enough, the normal economic rules just don't apply.
Exactly. Think of it like luxury fashion. H&M or Zara, they need to have new clothes in the store every single week to keep you coming back.
Right.
Hermes can have a waiting list for a Birkin bag that lasts for 3 years. Sade became the Birkin bag of music.
I love that analogy. By not being available, she actually increased her value. The demand just built and built.
It did. So when they finally returned in the year 2000 with the album Lovers Rock,
Yeah.
it wasn't just another album release. It was a major cultural event.
And Lovers Rock was a huge sonic pivot, too.
A major one. They stripped away a lot of the overt jazz elements. They leaned very heavily into acoustic guitars and reggae rhythms.
Hence the title, Lovers Rock, which is a specific subgenre of romantic reggae.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The whole album was warmer, more domestic, more intimate. It sounded like a band playing together in a living room, not a slick studio. And it worked. It won the Grammy for Best Pop Vocal Album.
And the tour.
Yeah.
The Lovers Rock tour was gigantic. It was the 13th biggest tour in North America at the time.
Which just proved that the fan base hadn't left. They hadn't gone anywhere. They had just been waiting patiently.
And so, having seen that this works, she tests them again. She disappears for another 10 years.
10 years. A full decade between Lovers Rock and Soldier of Love.
That is just... It's an incredible amount of silence in the music business.
And think about the decade she skipped. From 2000 to 2010. That's when the entire music industry was turned upside down and reinvented.
Right. Napster came and went. The iTunes store took over everything. Social media was born. Facebook, Twitter.
And yet, Sold was nowhere to be found. She was living in the English countryside, raising her child, renovating a house, just living.
And when Soldier of Love finally drops in 2010...
It debuts at #1 on the Billboard 200 chart.
After a 10-year absence, that is staggering.
It broke a record, actually, for the longest time between #1 albums for a group. It was almost 25 years between Promise hitting #1 and Soldier of Love doing the same.
Wow.
It showed that her appeal is completely multi-generational. You have the original fans from the 80s who grew up with her, and then you have this whole new generation who had discovered her through sampling and, cultural osmosis.
Okay, let's talk about that cultural osmosis, specifically the hip-hop connection, because on paper, it really doesn't make any sense.
It seems like a mismatch.
A huge one. You have these rugged, often aggressive rappers obsessing over this quiet, elegant British-Nigerian woman singing these soft songs about love and heartache.
But spiritually, it's a perfect fit. Hip-hop at its core values cool. It values authenticity, and it values someone who stays in their own lane and just completely dominates it.
She has an undeniable mystique.
She does. And the pioneers loved her. Rakim, arguably the god MC, has said in interviews he grew up listening to her. He even references Smooth Operator in his classic track, Microphone Fiend.
And it's not just the lyrical references, it's the samples. The sound of her music is woven into the DNA of so much hip-hop.
The production of Sade, that heavy bass, the clean drums, the space between the notes, it's ready-made for hip-hop loops. The producer Jay Dilla used her. MF Doom, maybe the greatest underground rapper ever, sampled her extensively on his album Operation Doomsday.
And it gives those tracks this instant layer of sophisticated, melancholic cool.
It does. Then you have Kanye West back in his blog era, just geeking out, posting Sade is back in all caps because he was so excited for her return. And then there's Rick Ross, who literally has a tattoo of her face on his body.
On his leg, I think. He's the ultimate superfan.
He is. Rick Ross said, and I quote, "There's never been a bad Sade track. And I think what rappers like him respect is the game. Sade has ultimate game."
Explain that. What do you mean by game?
She doesn't beg for attention. She doesn't chase trends. She doesn't show up to every party. She releases music on her terms when she feels it's ready, and the world stops to listen. In a genre like hip-hop that is so often about posturing and power plays, Sade represents this quiet, unshakable power.
It's a different kind of authority.
A different kind. Talib Kweli said he learned precision from listening to her. That's a great word for it. She never wastes a single note or a single word.
So she's the queen of quiet storm, but she's got the undisputed respect of the streets. It's such a unique position to hold in music.
It is. And all of this has cemented her legacy. Rolling Stone put her at number 51 on their 200 Greatest Singers of All Time list in 2023.
And she was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2023, nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She is canon now.
Utterly.
I want to pivot to the personal side briefly because for someone so intensely private, the few glimpses we do get are very telling about her character. We mentioned she moved to the countryside.
Yes. In 2005, she bought a rundown cottage in Gloucestershire. And this wasn't one of those celebrity, I bought a farmhouse situations where they hire a famous contractor and then just show up for the photo shoot.
Yeah.
She was deeply involved in the renovation herself. Apparently, she really likes manual labor. She likes building things, fixing things. It grounds her.
It's that practical district nurse mother influence coming through again. No nonsense.
Absolutely. And she's been with her partner, Ian Watts, who is a former Royal Marine since 2007. It's a very stable, very un-Hollywood life that she's built for herself.
But the most significant personal story to emerge in recent years has been her relationship with her child, Isaac Theo Adu.
Yes, Isaac is her child from a relationship she had with the Jamaican music producer, Bob Morgan. And in 2016, Isaac came out as a transgender man.
A journey he documented very openly on social media.
He did, and this was obviously a major moment for their family. And by all accounts, and from Isaac's own words, Sade was incredibly supportive through the entire process.
He's posted some very moving tributes to her online, thanking her for standing by him during his transition, during the surgeries. He called her his rock.
And what I find so beautiful and so quintessentially Sade is how she handled it publicly. She didn't issue a press release. She didn't do an Oprah interview about her journey as a parent.
No, she put it in the music.
She put it in the music.
Yeah.
In 2024, she released a track called Young Lion as part of a Red Hot Organization compilation album for trans awareness. The song is dedicated to Isaac.
And the lyrics are they're heartbreakingly tender. It's framed almost as an apology for any pain she might not have understood at first, and a fierce celebration of the man he has become.
Young Lion. Such a powerful, protective title. It just shows that even in her 60s, she's still using her art to process the most intimate, most important parts of her life.
And that's why the music resonates, isn't it? It's real. It's not just product churned out for the algorithm.
Not at all.
So that brings us up to the present day, more or less. We've had Young Lion. We had those two brilliant soundtrack songs in 2018.
Right. Flower of the Universe. For Disney's A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah.
The director, Ava DuVernay, said she basically just put it out into the universe, never thinking a million years that Sade would actually say yes.
But she did.
She did, and she also did The Big Unknown for Steve McQueen's movie Widows. And the reason she said yes to that was because the original TV series from the 80s resonated with her as a story about women surviving against the odds. She picks projects that have real artistic merit.
But the big question that every fan is always asking, is there another album? It's been 14 years now since Soldier of Love.
There is smoke, so there might be fire. The sources have confirmed that in 2022, the band, the original four, Sade, Stuart, Andrew, and Paul, reconvened at Miraval Studios in France.
Miraval, that's legendary. That's where they recorded parts of Promise and Stronger Than Pride back in the 80s.
Exactly, returning to the scene of the crime. Brad Pitt actually owns the studio now, along with a French producer named Damien Quintard.
So they were there, in the studio.
They were there. Quintard himself confirmed it. He said they were working and that Sade and the band were special people. Now, does that mean an album is coming next month? With Sade, you never ever know. But the machine has been turned on.
So we wait, as we always do.
As we always do.
You know, as we wrap this up, I keep going back to this idea of her career as a masterclass in mystique. In a world where we are just drowning in content, where everything is disposable and forgotten by next week, Sade feels like an heirloom.
She is an heirloom. That's a perfect description. She represents a completely different value system. She proves that you don't have to play the game by the industry's rules.
You can just opt out.
You can live in the countryside. You can take 10 years off to be a mother. You can refuse to do 99% of interviews. And if your art is true, if it is of a high enough quality, the world will wait for you.
It's actually a really comforting thought. It suggests that maybe we aren't as addicted to the new as we think we are. Maybe we're just starved for the good.
I think that's it right there. We don't actually need more. We need better. And Sade is always, always better.
Here's a final thought to leave you with. In this age of AI-generated music and constant digital noise, what does it say about us as listeners that the thing we might crave most is the scarcest resource of all, an artist's patient, human, and deliberate silence?
Something to think about.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.